Alright, so let's get into it. In this video, we're going to be going over the VLOOKUP and the HLOOKUP functions, some of the most powerful functions in Excel. But before we get started, I want to go over what the VLOOKUP function is. So with the VLOOKUP function, we're going to tell Excel to look in a table, a set of cells, and it's going to look at the most left table vertically, or the most left column vertically, and it's going to tell us the information in that first column to the left, and then it will give out the information to the column on the right, any of the columns on the right. So for example, we have employee Jake Allen, and we want the email to come up if we tell it to look at Jake Allen. So the best way to do is just get started with this. So we're going to start with the equal sign and then type VLOOKUP, and then open the parentheses. So the first thing that we want is the lookup value, and our lookup value is what we're looking for. So we're searching for Jake Allen, so we're going to highlight that cell right there with Jake Allen, then we're going to press comma, and now we want the table array. And our table array is where is this lookup value and the value that we want to get put out, where is that data in. So for this case, it's going to be that table that we have at the top. So we're going to highlight that entire table, and that's going to be our table array, and then we're going to press comma again. So now we have to tell it what column that we want it to look in. So the first column is employee, so that's 1, and we count over to email. So 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's the 6th column where email. You just have to count from all the way to left and right. So we're going to type in 6. That's the column we want. Then we press comma. And then we want a approximate match or the exact match. So if you type in true, you get the approximate, or false for an exact. So normally you want exact match. You want exactly what's in the cell. So you want exactly what that email is that's going to be in that same row as Jake Allen. So we can either type false, or we can just type in 1 or 0 as well. So 1 would be equals true, and 0 equals false in Excel. So in this case, I like to type 0 a lot of times. It's just easier. You don't have to type out anything. So I'm going to type in 0 for an exact match, close the parentheses, and press enter. So you see now we have the email for Jake Allen. And I know you might be thinking that's a lot of work just to get that email, but in a lot of other situations that can become a lot more beneficial. And then if I update the cell to a different employee's name, you see it automatically updates the email as well. Or I can even type in somebody's name as well. So Nathan Sidney, but you see I typed it in wrong. So an error comes. So sometimes that can be annoying if you're looking, you didn't even realize you typed the name wrong, so that can be time consuming as well. So it's easier just to kind of make it equal to a cell where the employees' names are. But here's another thing we can do. We can use data validation. And with data validation, we can create a list of all the employee names. So what we're going to do is choose all the employee names that we have in that first column, and then we're going to go to data validation. We're going to go to the data tab in our ribbon, and then we're going to go into our data tools, and then there's a data validation button. So you can see it picks from a list of rules to limit. So you give it rules to limit of what the cell is allowed to choose. So we're going to go to allow instead of any value. We're going to go change that to list, and then the source that we want, the source will be our employee name. So we want it to be a list of employee names, so we're just going to highlight the names of the employees, and we'll press OK. So now we have this little drop down menu, and we can choose different employee names. And so now we're going to use VLOOKUP to get the phone number for an employee. So once again, equals VLOOKUP, and then open the parentheses. So our lookup value is still that employee's name, so cell A18, comma. Then our table array is still that same table we chose in the first example. It's that we want that entire table And then we're going to press comma again. And now what column index number? So what numbers of the cell? So now we're looking for the phone number, not the email. So we'll have to count over again. And it's the 7th column. So we're going to press comma. And then we're going to press 0 for exact match. And then close the parentheses. And now you can see we have the phone number for Jordan Drew. But with this list that we created, we can scroll through whatever name we want. And when we choose a different employee's name, you can see the phone number is updating as well. So we don't have to keep manually changing the names or changing that. We just have a list there for our employees. So now this next time, we're going to do data validation again for those names, but we're just going to hit Control C, and then we're going to hit Control V to paste. And you see that the list was pasted as well. You can see the drop down menu, the little button, and we didn't have to go through that whole process again. So now we want to find the address, and more practice. Equals VLOOKUP. Our lookup value is still going to be the employee's name right there. So A21, comma, our table array, so where our value is and where the output we want, we got to highlight that table, press comma, and then it's the 2nd column, so where the addresses are. So we're going to put in 2, then comma 0, and 0 for exact match. And now we have the address for Jake Allen, and we could just scroll through the list, choose any name we want, and you see the address will update with it as well. So that's a great tool. And also we already have a list of names here, and we just want to find the salaries, but I want to show you how we can write it out one time VLOOKUP and fill it in for multiple different employees when we already have a list instead of going through this data validation list. So once again, equals VLOOKUP. We're going to press that first cell where the employee's name is right next to it. The same table array we've been choosing, but this time after choosing the table, we're going to hit F4, and you see those dollar signs come in place, and it's going to lock our table in place, our array in place. So now we have to look for the column that salary's in, so we just got to count it out, and it's in the 9th column. So we're just going to type 9, and then of course we're going to hit 0 for an exact match. And now since we locked the column in, we can just highlight those cells, and then I'm gonna hit Control D to fill it in automatically. So I highlighted all the cells for the salary next employee, and I just hit Control D to fill downwards for the rest of the employee salaries. So now let's go over HLOOKUP. So instead of looking in the first column vertically, it's going to look in the first row of the table, and it's going to search horizontally. So it's going to search the whole top row instead of the whole first column this time. So now we're going to find email for Alan Jake. We're going to type in HLOOKUP, and once again our lookup value is going to be our email, since that's what's in that first row. We're not looking for Alan Jake anymore. We're looking what's in the first top row. So then our table array is the same table that we've been using, comma. Now we're looking for what row is Jake Allen's name in, and his is in the 2nd row. So now we're going to type 2. So you see, and then we're going to comma 0 for exact match, and it's similar to VLOOKUP, but instead of looking for the employee's name in that first column, we're looking for the header in the first row. So our lookup value was email in this case. And once again, let's just equal employee's name to Drew Jordan, and we can use HLOOKUP to find any information on Drew Jordan if we were to make a data validation list depending on the headers in the first row. So once again, let's create a list. So we're going to go to data validation again in our data, and we're going to create a list. But this time our list is going to be all of our headers in that first row. So that's going to be our source. So now we can scroll through all of Drew Jordan's information, any employee we want. after we put in this HLOOKUP. So for now, we'll start with the hire date. So once again, we're going to type in equals HLOOKUP, and now our lookup value once again is that hire date. So it has to be an item in that top row, that first row. It's not going to be the employee name anymore. So then our table array is the same table we've been choosing. Press comma again. What row is Drew Jordan in? And it's 4th. You can see the 4 right next to Drew Jordan's name as well. Comma 0 for exact match, and close parentheses. And you see the hire date, it's not formatted correctly. It's formatted as general, but if we were to update that to date, short date, you can see now it looks in the date. But also, if we're to scroll through different headers, we can see the address for Drew Jordan, the zip, but now you see the date was, so now we have to go to general. So there's a little bit of formatting that has to go, but you see we can scroll through all these different headers in that first row, but now we're just looking for one employee. We're looking horizontally through that first row, then we just look horizontally through the row it tells us, instead of looking vertically through the column it tells us. So that's HLOOKUP, and that was VLOOKUP. Instead of having to manually look through these columns and rows, especially if you have a lot of data, you can use these formulas, and as well as using data validation to create lists, you could quickly scroll through different employee names or headers, and that's it.